Data Storytellers, I have my pen and paper here for a very exciting conversation. So we're living through quite a unique moment, I think, in history. We'll look back at 2025 and think about the year that this whole AI transformation went down in a lot of ways. I think a lot of important things are happening today, and 2026 is promising to be a big year. So to capture this moment, I have with me on the show Ron Hetrick. So I actually came across Ron's posts on LinkedIn. As you know, I'm not often on LinkedIn, but his thoughts and his perspectives kind of caught my attention. I found it very insightful, and I shamelessly reached out to him and I told him to come on the show and let's have a conversation. And it was a good sport, and I think we have a good show for you today. So, Ron, welcome on the Data Storytellers.
Well, thank you for having me, Laszlo. It should be an interesting conversation, that's for sure.
Definitely. So before we kind of introduce you and where you're coming from, so today, as we already discussed, we are going to do something different to what most people might be familiar with these days when it comes to AI. I think a lot of people are jumping the gun, quickly. People get into different tribes, and there are a lot of self-proclaimed experts on the topic, just kind of regurgitating the mostly AI slob that's circulating in the ether. So we want to do something very different today. We're definitely going to get to the heart of the matter of, hey, what's actually going on? There are multiple domains at play here, right? So there's a technology domain, what became possible with AI, and what are the limitations of that? There's a very important, societal factor of how people and institutions will adapt and change to what's happening. But also, I think the most important lens today is the economic one. And I think it's not being treated with enough nuance and respect. And that's what we are going to try and do today. So, Ron, what kind of perspectives are you bringing to the conversation? Would you mind giving us a short introduction into who you are and what you do?
Sure. So if anybody's not familiar with me, a number of years ago, back in 21, I was lead author of a long research paper called Demographic Drought. And in Demographic Drought, really what we were trying to say is everything you've ever known for the past 30, 40, 50 years is done. It's all changing because demographics, the aging of the boomers and everything is going to have a very profound effect on not only society, but my concern, I'm a labor economist, it's more on the world of work and how we're going to get things done. While I was out speaking on Demographic Drought, I ended up writing another paper called Who's Going to Do the Work? And it literally meant who is going to do the work. And really where that paper was going was to say that we have a very college educated population. Our labor force is very, very predominantly people with a bachelor's degree. And that's nice, but somebody has to do the work. Like we're a care society, we're a service-based society, and we really don't have a lot of those people, whether it's home health aides or skilled trades and things like that. And then when we wrote Demographic Drought, that was 21. That was quite a crazy time. So we updated Demographic Drought in 24, and that was called The Rising Storm. And in The Rising Storm, it was what we had learned after writing Drought. Also, the data had gotten a lot more normal after the pandemic was kind of fading away. So it allowed us a lot of a clearer picture to see what the next 10 years were going to look like. So the point of The Rising Storm is we have felt some labor disruptions. We have felt some labor shortages in this country, but those were outer bands of a storm that's coming that's going to be much more intense than anything we've ever seen to this point.
Very interesting. And I know that, I'm a millennial, so I grew up in the 90s mainly. And when I grew up, the talk of the town globally was that there are too many people. There are too many people. Right. And then I think that tune silently changed and is changing today. I think I think the first person I heard talk about this who had a voice, I think Elon Musk dropped it in an interview like a couple of years ago, but then
that's after he read a Wall Street Journal article, which was about our paper. That's what
there you go.
About Demographic Drought. So yeah, Elon Musk became an early on convert.
Interesting. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious that we're up against something that we've never seen before. I mean, we can, look at the reasons, and, I'm sure that, we can get lost in the weeds with the whole, topics around contraception and all that, but we can just focus on the effects and the realities,
Sure.
right? And
That's
and
what
and
we
I
try to
think
do.
exactly, and then there's this emerging conversation now, because we need to kind of take that seriously. So what I wanted to do today is, because about AI, a lot of people are saying a lot of things, obviously, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of self-interest in the mix, a lot of money
A lot
as
of money.
well involved. So we hear that AI is the fourth industrial revolution and all that, but we also hear people referring to previous revolutions, especially in the context of the Industrial
Yeah.
Revolution and the three waves of the Industrial Revolution, all the way, back to the steam engine and then
Yeah.
electricity, and then the third wave that we're living through now, right? I mean, these things only make sense in hindsight. So economists and historians are still debating, exactly how many phases does this third industrial
Right.
revolution have, right? We can
Right.
kind of look at it, I think, in a way where we had a first phase with electronics after the Second World War, right? And that became mainstream. Then maybe like a second wave with computing, and then perhaps a third wave that we're kind of in now with
Right.
digitization on a mass scale.
Sure.
And then a case can be made that AI might end up being the fourth wave of that same revolution. It might end up being not a revolution at all. We don't know, and then whether it becomes the fourth industrial revolution, we're yet to see. But
Yeah.
so I would like to look at actually how economies work,
Yes.
and what happened after the Second World War. What kind of similarities can we see compared to previous cycles of the
Mhm.
booms and busts, and then the build
Right.
cycles as well, and also why this is different? And I think we already kind of dropped the spoiler there, that there's a unique element here
Yeah.
with the demographics changing drastically, and the dynamics there. Before we dive in, though, just a quick question: how did you get into this particular, on this particular track, like writing that book? Like, what led you to that? I'm
Yeah.
just personally curious.
It's actually an incredibly good question. I never get asked that question. So I've been a labor economist now over 30 years. I started at the Bureau of Labor Statistics in DC, and I started writing papers like about labor economics and doing all these things. And then it got into about just after the housing bubble. And so we're in the early 20 teens. And at that point, I started noticing, it just seemed that every time I was looking at certain markets, looked like we were running out of people, especially when it came to things like manufacturing. And at the time, I was doing a lot of things like adjusting rates for temporary staffing and issues like that. But what we noticed was it didn't seem to matter how much we adjusted rates, that there just weren't people around. And it was the very first time that I ever looked at things and went, oh my goodness, things are really changing in this country. I don't think people really know this. At the time, a research book or something had come out called The Rise of the Robots. And I'll never forget, they said, robots are going to come and take everybody's jobs. And I started speaking shortly after that book came out. And one of the things I would do is get up and say, like, you wish there was a robot army coming. There is no robot army coming. You can forget it. And that was now written, I want to say more than 12, 13 years ago. And obviously it didn't happen. And, you have these things that you get in your zealousness, I think sometimes, to go, well, it's all okay because the machines will take over, or you're scared to death and you go, the machines are going to take over. What you forget is how tremendously slow technology is. We're in what we're calling this AI, which I still don't like the words AI. That's a very bad name for large language models. However, we're in this, what people are calling this rapid change, but it's not. It's, people are and we're going to be talking about this today, but people are really struggling to see, well, how do I apply a large language model in a sustainable, profitable, revenue generating product? And they're really struggling to do that. And I don't want to get too over my skis for where we're going, but I think that this is an element where I feel like it's become an unfortunate distraction versus the real issue. And the real issue is that we're looking at the top occupations that we're expecting to grow in this country, 2034, things like home health aides, because of the number of people in the country that don't want to die in a nursing home or die in a hospital. People want to die at home. Well, you need home health aides. And they don't have degrees and they don't make a lot of money. And we still need a lot of people in retail and restaurants and the food supply and cops and firefighters and all these skilled trades that take care of society. That's what we don't have. And AI and all these technologies do absolutely nothing for that. And yet it's completely distracted our attention and definitely our money, which has really taken us sideways for a couple of years. And that is really what's, when I wrote the things that I did back in the 2010s, and when I was speaking, I obviously didn't see AI coming. When we wrote Demographic Drought, no one even said the words AI in 21. When I did Who's Going to Do the Work, it was the nascent stages where people kind of threw the terms around. By 24, people were saying AI, but we certainly didn't have the kind of irresponsible spending we are having now back in 24, or else we probably would have addressed it a little more. What we talked about in Rising Storm was that, hey, this is cute, but that's not like where we see this stuff being applied. How people are talking about how they're going to use it is in none of the jobs that we are saying we're going to be affected by a labor shortage. This is all in jobs that we actually didn't think there was going to even be a labor shortage, like college degree jobs. We're not lacking for college graduates, and we certainly won't be lacking in 4 years because we have the largest entering college class we've ever had. So that's where I started looking at this collision, and that has emboldened me more and more to be like, hey, we're really approaching this thing completely wrong. We are still an economy driven by small businesses, manual labor a lot of the time, boots on the ground, and yet we have a technology that's so far, what's it going to do? Well, it can help in your supply chain. It can help in your HR. It can help in your customer service. And we're like, great, don't care. That's not anything that we were projecting shortages in. It's not something that we felt we were doing egregiously bad. But there's something much, much bigger. And that's what we're kind of talking about today. And that is the argument for technology, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, and I'm going to say the second phase of the first one, because the second phase was when that industrial aspect of that really started taking off. Whether you get to the IT revolution back in the early 70s, what you were seeing then was a blowing up of the consumer base around the globe. Countries all over the world really seeing surges in their populations. Healthcare was getting better. Babies were no longer, they were living longer, and people were getting more educated. So buying power was greatly increasing. So what these revolutions did was allow us to create more to go to a larger consuming population. So if you were involved in that creation, you're benefiting as well. Your wages are going up because there's just so many consumers growing. So I call it consumerism. Consumerism just kept exploding and exploding, exploding. And you have to take that to where we are now. And so now we're kind of on our apex turn. So a lot of countries in the world have already begun to decline. Their populations are on decline. Japan's been declining since 2010. China's been declining the past 4 years. Russia's been declining for about the same. Germany's pretty much about ready to flip. Italy will flip. The US native-born population will flip in 2033. Before populations flip, their labor forces and flip. Well, labor forces are where a lot of the money generation comes from, and that's where your consumers come from. So we're doing all of this AI stuff, all of these expenditures at a time when we're starting to look at a reversal in consumerism, where the less people selling less goods to less people generate less. And so GDP starts to contract. Japan's GDP hasn't meaningfully changed in 25, 30 years. And that's what we're getting ready for as well. And so trying to justify these kind of expenditures, given what, thinking, well, I'm going to get a return off of this, that's where the struggle is for me as a labor economist is a return from who exactly? And that's the darker secret. And that is people talk about these large language models, and the application is always in efficiency and getting rid of people, replacing jobs eventually, certainly not happening now, just the money spent on it. But that's another problem, right? For every job I get rid of, that's one less consumer. AI is not consuming anything. So it really takes a situation that was already looking grim as far as losing a consumer base. And then it says, well, let me see if I can put an accelerator pedal down on the number of consumers I can knock out of the market. And I think at that point, you start to really wonder why we're doing this in the first place.
So, yeah, and that will be like a fascinating conversation that I think we can really double click and see what's happening under the hood. Now, before we get there, so I think one of the difficulties today is that when you talk about AI, right, you're throwing those thoughts and insights into a very chaotic narrative landscape, right?
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. If you share something on LinkedIn that might be skeptical of AI, or it sounds like it's skeptical about AI, right? And you cite the MIT study, or lately, maybe an even better study is the Atlassian
Atlassian.
study.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, essentially says that, 95, 96% of enterprise use cases of generative AI are not actually producing any meaningful ROI, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of the crux of it now. If you look at the methodology of the MIT study, that can be critiqued for sure. I think the Atlassian study is better in that sense. But, even if it's just kind of directionally true, it's still
That's right.
still true. Now, I'm in the enterprise data analytics and AI space, right? So basically, I work with the individuals who are initiating, again, conceptualizing, initiating these projects that have to do with data analytics and AI and any kind of data-driven innovation. And at the end of the day, the AI that we have today is just a data-driven technology. That's also an important thing to mention, by the way, because not to jump around, but one of the reasons why often things don't get adopted on a societal scale, there is this commercial that you might have seen. It's an IBM commercial in the 90s, and is this actor who talks about kind of a catchy commercial where it's like, "Hey, I've been promised flying cars. Like, where are the flying cars?" Right? And the punchline of the IBM commercial is that we don't have flying cars because we don't want flying cars, right? So it's one thing, what becomes possible with the technology purely, but there's also it's a much more complex question. Now, I think what's happening today. Yeah, you want to fly, and you still don't get a flying car because there's no societal there's no societal appetite.
No one ever said, "Well, what would a highway look like in the sky?" when they said there would be flying cars. But that's completely
exactly
just a lot of reps is what I was anticipating.
Yeah, definitely. The societal layer of that whole question of, the widespread adoption, how that's regulated, safety and all that. It's just a whole mess. But my point is that it was kind of fantasy. AI is a little bit similar. Also robots, right? So if in the 70s, 80s, we thought about robots and AI, just look at the movies that were produced at the time. That's science. Yeah, that's science fiction, and there's nothing wrong with science fiction. I believe that like every fiction, every good fiction that resonates with people speaks to some sort of, deep reality and truth and yearning in the human heart. But that's more like poetry, right? More like a fiction. And robots are still today, I personally believe that the whole, I will have a robot lackey. Well, I think it's not because the technology is not there or that it cannot produce it, but I do not want a robot standing next to me, right? Or with my children. That's just like, one point of view. But what I'm suggesting is that it's much more complex. With AI, when we talked about AI in the 80s, people did not mean what we mean by AI today in 2025. They did not mean large language models, right? Which is still like kind of a one-dimensional technology. What they meant maybe is more approximate to what we say when we say AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is multi-dimensional. But I think what happened is that around 2022, when ChatGPT became mainstream, that was maybe more like 2023. In 2022, late 2022, that's when people started to talk about it in everyday conversation. And in 2023, that was the ChatGPT revolution. And it finally sounded like a human, smelled like a human, it felt like a human. So that's the main difference. But then I think there is a reckoning happening right now of, oh, wait, it's just an LLM, with the good and the bad. Because make no mistake, I believe it's a fascinating technology. And I know personally, I use it all the time, right? Everyone has their own use cases. I love it as a personal note taker, right? It's the most effective tool to capture ideas, but it's still kind of one-dimensional. So the people that I work with, they are trying to build AI products in large enterprises that will be, enjoyable to use, that will generate value within the enterprise, right? And I know for a fact that those use cases are happening. It takes longer than what we might expect, right? But all those use cases with the agentic AI solutions that will kind of build on existing workflows and making them more efficient and more productive, they are real. They are coming. Do we have to wait, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 18 months? For sure, right? But they are coming. Your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that sure, that can be true, but it's at the end of the day, that's not the point. That's not the point. Whether that will happen or not will not change the bottom line, which is basically what we have today is that it's not just the US, but let's look at the US economy because the US is still the global hegemon, right? At the end of the day, so whatever the US does economically will impact everyone in a major way, is that the US is making almost like an all-in bet on this one thing, which is the return on AI. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. Because a lot of people might come in with objections. And no, the use cases are coming. You don't understand. It will be amazing, and I'm sure it will be. And a lot of organizations,
we've been hearing it is coming for. I'm kind of over the it is coming only because I can't look back at any technology that was 3 years in that had so little tangible good ideas as what we're seeing here. I think there's just so many aspects of it. And I've got to always be careful because as I tell my audiences when I'm speaking around the country, it's like, it's not that I hate technology. My gosh, I started programming an Atari 800 when I was a little kid. Like I loved computers and I love all these things. There's a couple of things about AI that it's the narratives. It's the dirty narratives. We want it to replace jobs. I'm like, okay, that's gross. Like, stop talking like that. Like, how are you supposed to impassion a population to care about something when the approach is something very dark and end times like conversations? And I mean, you hear people talking about universal basic incomes. I'm like, all right, enough. Like, I don't want a dystopian society. If that's it, let's pull the plug on this stuff right now. No, if you're talking about, well, there are going to be products that are going to be life-changing, I go, okay, that's cool. I mean, let's think of our last life-changing product. I would call it the cell phone. A cell phone was a very significant change. It took all of the power that you had in your computer at home and then said, well, let's put it in your hand so that you can access this kind of information, wherever you go. You can now call somebody and text them at the same time and then email them something and actually take a picture and send them something like that. That was a pretty big deal. But cell phones were a continuation of what we were seeing already. And so one of the ways that I kind of look back at technology is that technology has always fixed inefficiencies. That's why they're valuable. So the Industrial Revolution fixed the inefficiency of production so that you could produce more to get to this consuming base that needed more, but they couldn't wait, 2 years for you to build a car by hand. They needed cars to come out at a much faster rate. And then you get to computers, and computers took a lot of the things that you need to get work done. Everybody also, they kind of democratized that. Everybody had these tools now. They could all get their work done faster. And remember, at the time of computers, it's the 70s, 80s, and 90s, fastest growing labor pool we've ever seen, prime age labor pool growth we've ever seen. It just came at the perfect time to service that. The internet comes in around 1990. World Wide Web comes in at this time. And the World Wide Web fixes an unbelievable inefficiency. And that is, there are consumers all over the globe who want things. They just don't know that they actually exist or where they are. And the internet's like, here they are. And here you are. Or I need information so that I want to know what to do on this trip or anything. It fixed that lack of the inefficiency we had in the market, which allowed consumers to completely unlock. Because now I maybe wanted to spend money. I just didn't know that this thing existed. Or I thought that was out of print. I thought people didn't make this anymore. They do, and I can get it. All of those things about it created industries. But I want you to think about it. It created industries that thrived on the fixing of the inefficiency in the market. So who was built and created during this time? Amazon. Why did Amazon thrive? Because they looked at it and said, if this inefficiency has been fixed between the retailer and the consumer, then let's get in the middle of that and be the biggest. We'll aggregate the retailers and have all the consumers come to a space. It's like they're the world's biggest mall. Amazon's not selling you the goods, but they're managing all of these tons of companies that are. It was a perfect clearinghouse, and it made sense. In the middle of doing that, I was told in the early 1990s there would be no more brick and mortar retail in 10 to 15 years. Now, remember, that was in the early 1990s. It's 2025, and I can drive out of my house right now, as can anybody, and see brick and mortar retail literally everywhere. In fact, they're still building it like crazy where I live. And you go, okay, it didn't erase anything, it added. And it added for the people who are like, look, I don't think there's any place in my town who sells this remote control that broke on my TV that's 5 years old, but I can go on Amazon and find that remote. Fix that inefficiency while people still preserve the value of going out with their friends, going shopping, going out to restaurants, which is what people want. They want all of it.
On your
And
way
I looked at,
home, you want to drop in and pick up some milk, right? That's
right.
not
Yeah.
going anywhere.
It will never, there will always be people who are like, I got to get out of the house. Oh my goodness, I'm losing my
Yep.
mind. I mean, COVID made everybody insane. And
Think
it's
about
like,
Whole
well,
Foods, right? They
it's like,
made grocery shopping an experience and the personal experience.
yes,
You love going there
yeah.
because people are so nice. Okay, it might, milk might cost $20, but at the same time, it's still an experience.
But it's, and even in that, it created the industries of Instacart and really accelerated the growth of the DoorDashes and things like that. All of these things, there were markets for people who were like, I'm sick, I can't get out of the house. I wish there was something that brought it to me. Did it get rid of the stores that the people pick the food up from? No, it just gave a new avenue to do that. Let's take all of this and go to large language models. So large language models have been around for about, I would say in earnest, about 7 years. And so back when this thing started happening, we were doing machine learning, all of these kind of things. I was involved with that in my prior company. And it was really cool, like just ingesting all of your information and figuring out new ways of taking it. When AI came along, I'll never forget a video that came out really early on in its phase. And in that video, it was the title was Why AI is Big Tech's Next Big Hoax. And it was talking about all of these things that AI or tech industries like to label things as a huge revolution so they can generate capital. Like they're trying to generate investment because they're constantly looking for that drug-like surge of when they get those big returns. But a key line that the guy said in the video that I thought was so important is he said, AI exists because companies believed their data scientists were too stupid to extract the full value out of their data. We were already heading down this path. We already had the data. We already had programmers who could program what we learned from the data. We had assistive tools to help you do your jobs, all of these things. We had all of those kind of things. I built a tool, my goodness, 15 years ago where somebody could type in a market and it would tell you all the economic information you wanted from that market. And I built that. Oh, and by the way, mine didn't hallucinate. And it actually told you the actual data that was actually going on the market. And I even had coded in my own thoughts about things if the trends went certain ways. So this stuff isn't really earth-shaking in any way, shape, or form. What's fascinating about it is people like that it sounds conversational when it's talking to you, that you're asking questions to it and it's answering you back in a conversational way. And we look at that and we go, okay, cute, whatever. Where are we going with this? Like, what's a product? And this is where we have been looking at this and circle back to my first point. We're several years in, and at this point, things should be breaking through. Instead of saying it's coming, which I'm over that, we have to start saying, no, it's here and it's this product. It's not, well, we have tools now, these little agents that can help people do their jobs quicker and everything. I'm like, okay, cute. We could have designed that in the past couple of years anyway. I'm talking about what's the product? What's the revenue generating, groundbreaking, amazing, life-changing product like a cell phone? And so far, I don't want to mention people by name, but a certain CEO of a certain company, the ideas so far were an absolutely atrocious image generation system that mimics an already existing image generating or video uploading tool, but now it's just icky AI stuff. And they talk about, well, maybe we'll put advertisements on this. I'm like, icky, once again, that's not a groundbreaking, new, amazing thing to generate revenue. There's been mention of it could easily work its way into what we'll call the intimacy space because people like the realism and maybe they pay for that. And you go, okay, once again, kind of a gross way of taking technology. I'm looking for the product. And the only product I ever heard mentioned was, well, it'll be an assistive device that you carry around with you. And it'll be screenless and it's listening to your environment. I'm like, okay, two problems. Number one, you just described Alexa. Number two, is that how many people want something that they're carrying around that's constantly spying on their conversations, constantly offering them advice? I mean, we call that nagging, but all of those things I look at and I go, you need $2 trillion in revenue in the next several years. You have to justify your existence. What is it that what's coming? And you should be able to illustrate it really clearly by now. What exactly is coming? And you can't say a drug breakthrough. No, that's helping a drug company that already exists come up with a new way of coming up with a drug. We already have drug breakthroughs. You're just doing it, maybe you can say in a faster way, still has to go through the drug trials. I'm talking about net new. A computer was net new. The industries, the machines being made during the Industrial Revolutions were net new things. They accomplished things. What I'm looking for is that phase of it, that revenue, sustainable, profitable revenue generation over years, not for a short bit, not for a couple months. That you're never going to get your return. I'm talking a sustainable moat generating product that is going to change our lives. What is that?
Okay, I hear you. And let me just, I mean, I want to say devil's advocate, but I don't think I would be able to do it authentically, right? Because I'm not on that train of. So here's how I see it, and I'm also just a guy, right? So there's one side of this, which is the consumer application, right? And they are desperately trying to figure out what that consumer product will be. And I think that's why we get to those gross narratives like the whole erotica thing, which say what you will, almost every single person looks at that either with disgust or they don't want to do anything with it, right? So that is something that we're trying to throw things at the wall. And I think it just doesn't really stick. But also, to give the devil his due in general, I think CEOs are CEOs, right? So their job is, for better or worse, right? If you just look at it in an amoral way, not that you should, but you can, is like, well, he's the CEO of the company. I can think that peddling digital pornography is gross, right? And still think that, well, he's the CEO and at least I understand why he's doing what he's doing, right? So I think the CEOs today with these AI companies, well, what is their job is to rally as much attention as possible, further support from the market and further capital, and then also deal with whatever political stuff they have to deal with within their own companies. And also if it's a big enough company like OpenAI, they have to deal with geopolitics and everything else, right? Yeah. So again, not agreeing with anyone, but I understand why they do what they do. And they are trying to find the pulse on the consumer application. Whether that will happen or not, we don't know. I can tell you that, for example, how I use AI, at the end of the day, what it ended up being for me is being a note taker. And this is how my GPT and Claude are pre-prompted too. You are my digital note taker. That's just one use case that I'm using to organize thoughts and do things that maybe I couldn't do before, or there were obstacles in front of me. That's not groundbreaking though, and I wouldn't pay more than the $20 I'm paying. But that's also an important factor. Now, there are the enterprise applications. So the enterprise applications, I think what a lot of people are betting on, right? That, okay, now that enough support was rallied and enough capital went into this whole thing and enough boardroom attention under an extended period of time, it allowed for the infrastructure for some of these enterprise applications to arise. So that's actually, again, this is kind of my field when I work with heads of data and analytics and AI in Fortune 1000 companies. I know how they think about these things. I know kind of the roadblocks that were in the way before. And I know that the conditions are kind of coming together for it. Now, whether it will actually happen or not is anyone's guess, but I see how they are in a way better position now than they were a year before to roll out AI-driven solutions. Now, I can tell you that one of the roadblocks is the narrative that it will replace jobs. That's not an asset. That's a big issue. So it is distasteful, and I don't think it works either. It's kind of like the whole narrative a couple of years ago about, oh, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the grossest. Like it's always done by the people who propose, like seem to be champions for it, and I'm like, disgusting. Like how I don't understand. Like how does that generate investor and excitement to know those kind of things? Like that is, to me, it's always been, there's this vile undertone of it. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. You are already, and I want to put this thing in before you continue, because it's a big deal. You said you like to use it for note taking. You said enterprises are trying to come up with solutions. Okay, well, we already know that our electric bills are already going up. So I'm funding your note taking. I'm funding these solutions that these companies are coming up with. So if companies are if we're going to build data centers and we're going to destroy whatever environments around the data center and take the water that they're taking and doing all of these things, or build a bunch of nuclear reactors, and you go, okay, cool. So I'm funding this because like you cured cancer in 3 days because of, like, you have to show me why I'm already experiencing increased costs, why you've starved the capital markets of money so you could feed a couple industries that can't prove they have a product path when there's other industries that could prove they have a product path. And had we spent the past 3 years investing in them, we may have some really amazing things, but we starved everybody to feed this. So when I see Meta say, well, we're building these data centers, we want the data centers so we can keep people, we want to come up with ways to keep people on social media longer. And I'm like, wait, my electric bill is going up because you want to keep people addicted to social media? Like, it's not made up. I have the quote. He said it in his the quarterly statement, and I'm like, none of this is like, it sounds utopian. It sounds like something a crazy person would say, a conspiracy theorist person would say. I am none of those things. I'm a person who looks at this labor economy and is going, okay, money flows, capital flows. And I looked at this and I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense because I'm not seeing the return. And hold this thought, because I'm starting to mow outside my window right now.
Well, hopefully it's not a SWAT team. Someone said enough of this conversation.
I can't tell you how many times that happens. It's like, really? You're gonna mow now? But you see where I'm going with it is, when I talk about a life-changing product, it's a product that people go, look, if I have to sacrifice, if some really great people who spent a lot on their college and now have a lot of college debt end up losing their jobs because we gained this, then you know what? That's a trade-off that societies make over the course of their history all the time. If I have to pay increased utility bills because we gained this, then that's something, that's worthwhile. When we're looking at this and we kind of look out and we see this kind of obscene expenditure, we see that so many of the data centers really aren't being used that much. And we look at, and the point of the post that I put up most recently is, when we go back to studies from 23, there were so many companies already in 23 that were piloting AI things. And the vast majority of CIOs back then said, hey, AI and products is going to be really amazing. In 23, they said this. And now we're 2 full years later, and 96% of people are saying, yeah, we don't really see anything here. And I'm like, at some point, they're going to stop pushing money into the black hole. So I believe you're going to actually start to see the adoption of these things inverting, not taking off, because it's not that the data centers aren't finished yet, why they're not getting great returns. It's not because the models just aren't good enough. In fact, you're not even hearing as much about the next models because GPT-5 was really not great. And it's like, you look at these things and you go, people aren't saying, well, it's because it's just not good enough yet. It's because they threw it at everything, the spaghetti on the wall, and then they looked at it and said, well, it's really not helping us here, and it's really not helping us much there. And they made all their workers use it. Come use this. Come back and tell us how you used it, because we're trying to justify to the board that we spent a lot of money on this thing. Why should I maintain this license? Am I maintaining the license because my competitors are maintaining their license? Are they getting value out of it? So when you see these surveys, that, as we said before, if they're wrong by 10, 20%, fine. 96% is a pretty compelling number. I would say 30 to 40, 50%, okay, maybe it's not so bad. But I really think that society is looking at each other going, you should be finding value in this. And everybody's going, I know, I'm trying. I'm really trying, but I don't see anything. And it's like, yes, because it's an LLM and their usages are very limited. They're in efficiency. They're in helping your salespeople know which clients to target with which product. They're there to help you kind of figure out when should you be replenishing your warehouse. Like, these are very practical, lame things. They're certainly not this kind of next level intelligence, but what did you think it was going to do? And that's what we are really looking at right now. Like, I'm sorry, what did you think LLMs did? They don't invent anything. They're backwards looking. They only ingest things that are known. And then they hallucinate when they're doing that. Like, what did you think would happen with historical information? Like, once again, it exists because people thought the data scientists weren't smart enough to figure out how to extract the full value out of information. And what we're finding out is I think they were. In fact, some companies where they had really good data scientists they better not be seeing any value with AI, or it means the people they had were very terrible at their job. And I think that this is a narrative people won't let play out. We won't even allow ourselves to have the conversation. And I think that it's just silly. At some point, you just got to get this stuff on the table and say, what is the true market potential for an LLM? And that's where you have people who are like, well, I don't want this bubble bursting, so I'm going to make sure people don't hear you saying things like that. But I don't know. I'm not the only one anymore. There's a lot more of me's out there now who are starting to go, can you justify your existence? Like, stop telling me the things that are coming. I can't stomach that anymore. You have to start telling me what's here.
And I think this is a great angle from the perspective of, so before I kind of present you some narratives that, again, that are, and I know that they are narratives, and I know that it's a very appropriate thing to ask for things today. And I think that's also why the bubble bursting is almost inevitable. And I think, there's almost a consensus around this now that, of course, the bubble will be bursting. You know, whether you're a supporter or a skeptic or anything in between, everyone knows that the correction is coming. So I actually have a few things that I want to bounce off you with that. But before we do that, I think this is the time to actually like look back in history. So one of the arguments when you say that, okay, where are the results? Some arguments might be that, well, look, if we look back in history, we look back at the steam engine, we look back at the scaling of electricity. Well, those happened over long periods of times. And there was this kind of, beat and historical rhythm of boom, bust, build. Boom meaning that something new becomes possible through technological innovation.
Right.
People don't know exactly what to do with it yet, but fantasies are running wild, right? Money pours in, funding shows up, and there are a bunch of dead ends. So even if we look back at something that's super simple to us today as the steam engine, there are like big boosts and busts, and then building periods where the actual durable innovation was consolidated over time, right? And in the case of the steam engine, we're talking about 250 years ago, roughly. That happened over the decades, right? And then if we get to electricity, kind of the same idea, something qualitatively new, but before it got scaled over society, many companies folded and all that. Now, why? And I understand that we kind of gave it away before, that happened in a very different societal context, right? That it happened with growing populations, where there also there weren't just the birth rates that were incomparable to what they are today, but also improving hygiene and healthcare and everything else at the same time.
Everything came together,
which provided that cushioning. So I understand that, but so can we just maybe look at some of those previous booms and busts and then building periods, especially when we look at the post-World War II environment, right? Because I think I would love to look at that, especially a lot of people reference the dot-com bubble, myself included, when we look for similarities of how things might shake out, right? I said it often that the dot-com bubble burst and it was brutal, like 90-something% of the stock market was, at least for the internet companies, was wiped out. And well, something similar might happen now. That happened not because the internet was not a big deal. It happened because we did not know exactly what to do with it. Imagination ran faster than actual consolidation of the value. So something similar might happen today too. Before we get there and start to pick apart what's similar and what's different, can we just double click into this whole post-war economy and how technology advanced and how you look at that?
So I do look at these advances as something where a society is literally exploding, and it can recognize in looking at itself that things have to progress. And whether we go back to the steam engine and you think about, this is going to connect, I can visually look at this and go, this is going to connect this place with this place and get people here way faster than any, horse and buggy could. And it could allow us to move goods. Like conceptually, you could conceptualize how this could be great. You also can see the track, and it's going to take a long time to get there because, this is something that's going to have to happen. Oh, by the way, while they're building the track and everything, it's creating jobs, and it's doing some things there to kind of create that industry. When you go forward into other innovations and everything, whether it's machinery, whether you're building a factory floor, doing these kind of things. Once again, they're seeing this end thing. They're seeing that we've got consumers out there who are really waiting. If we could just produce more cars, if we could just produce more computers, if we could just create more steel, the buildings need to be built. The buildings are waiting to be built. Society is exploding. It's really trying to grow. We need to get these products out there to foster this growth. And then when we get to the dot-com thing, the dot-com bubble is one that I almost feel like it's almost funny just because everybody knew that selling things online was opening up a global market for sales. Like, you knew inherently this is going to be a good thing. The problem was, as investors do, if anybody said they had an idea, they threw enormous amounts of money at it when no one had really done a market study to say, well, if you do this, and Amazon does it too, but they've already captured this market, like, how are you going to create your own niche? And it was hard to figure out who was really going to succeed in that. And investors will always tell you, like, you throw a lot of bets out, some of them are going to miss, but the one that hits is going to make up for all the ones that miss. But at the end of the day, you always could see that this was fixing a massive inefficiency in the market. I mean, once you had it, you were just like, how did I live my life without this thing? When you get to things, like, a lot of people like to compare this like to the Uber thing. Well, Uber did like predatory pricing and knocked the cab companies out. Why did they do that? Because everybody hated cabs. It was a market that needed disrupted. So they just went ahead and predatorily kind of knocked them out of market with the way they priced. And then once that inefficiency was fixed, they kind of raised the prices. But what we ended up with was something we all wanted, which was we wanted to, when we got to a place, be able to have this thing pre-billed to us without having to pull out a credit card, dealing with a shady driver. You didn't know if they were background or anything like that. The trust levels went way up. I mean, they saw something in the market and said, this market could be so much better. When you go back to the fiber optic boom, the telecom bust in 2001, we were laying fiber optic cable down. I mean, this was the future of the world, of which AI benefits greatly off of something invented, so long ago. And I look at fiber optic as, what they called it at the time, the super information highway. We had highways, but we didn't have a highway for technology. In order for this to really explode, you needed to create that highway. So it's a physical product laid in that anybody can now build their city on top of this physical product. Then you get to large language models. So you start looking at it and going, okay, this is still an extension of the last thing. LLMs are basically an app. They are an extension of where we've been with computers for a long time. You access them on a computer, you access them on your phone. You're not accessing by your brain or anything like that. It's still the same kind of thing. It's just a different way of kind of ingesting information. And we go, okay, based off of probability estimates, which is what an LLM is, it's like, well, what do I do with the fact that, well, you've created a really good probability model? And I'm like, okay, cool. So what am I doing? I'm sitting at the forefront of this, and I'm looking out into the future, and I'm going, and what does a great probability model do for unlocking the potential of revenue in a market, of improving more greatly improving the retail space? But I mean, oh, by the way, that's just going to actually improve the .com people a little bit more. But you start to look at it and you go, there's nothing here that I'm seeing that is new. And I don't see, every time people mention to me the way they're doing it. So I'm in the staffing world. A lot of people are like, well, I use it for help with recruiting. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't feel like I should have to pay increased utility costs to help you with recruiting. I think you could have done it the old way, but I'm like, you really got to justify this existence with something so groundbreaking and so remarkable. And I would say this, it's that throughout history with every revolution, the only thing holding us up was unlocking this next thing. And anyone could look at it at the time and go, I can see where this is going. This could be pretty cool. The fact that companies got overvaluated and they corrected is an acceptable thing, because overall the bet in that direction is great. I have yet to, I just don't see it. And I've really I actually Googled and tried to show me how I'm wrong, like show me the other side. And what was amazing about it is in the very pro AI articles, when I would look at them, they would cite things. And when I would go to those sites, the leaks were either broken or they're violently misquoted, which means the AI probably had generated the pro AI articles over and over and over again. Everyone I went to was citing things that weren't correct. Like I would go read the thing, I'm like, that's not what this says at all. It actually says this. And I would go back and read the original, and I'm like, man, I think we're really getting messaged about the promise and everything from the tools themselves. Like there are people out there who have so much money invested in this, making sure that it succeeds, that they're really kind of allowing the tech to create a narrative for itself that no one really defends. From the days that I started putting up my posts to be like, hey, it's okay to start, scratching at the edges here. And we haven't talked about the most important part, which is the demographic aspect, which I'll hit. When people started doing this, I started poking at it going, why aren't we asking questions? Because people aren't really creating good use cases for me. Like they're not very convincing to justify the amount. I mean, trillions of dollars of investment must mean we're going to get some unbelievable thing that they've envisioned years ago. And here we are years in, and there's no vision. I mean, when you have Darius going, well, we're going to replace everybody's jobs. I'm like, well, that's certainly not going to make you any money. Like there's no money in that, replacing jobs doesn't make money. So what's the vision here? Like, I don't understand where you're going with this type of thing. And it's amazing. I put these posts up. The one that you probably saw is up to 200,000 impressions. And what's incredible about it is the comments are almost universal agreement. I've had a couple of people be like, well, I don't think you understand this part or that part. But at the end of the day, people aren't really arguing. I wanted the argument. That was the whole point I put the thing up, is like, I want the argument so that I can help myself understand what I'm missing. And I'm not getting the argument. So I continue to poke at it. And the more I'm finding out, the more I'm like, I need a good argument, the sustainable moat.
So I love this because, I might have some thoughts around that, but it actually probably took me like almost an hour now to kind of get one of your core ideas, which kind of clicked as you were talking. So you interestingly enough, and obviously too, you're approaching this from almost like an Aristotelian lens, in the sense that what is the outcome that this will generate, right? Like this,
Right.
This Aristotelian philosophical lens or the Thomistic lens is always looking at the purpose of things. What is the purpose, right?
Yeah.
So let's say with the steam engine, well, we obviously see what will happen. The obvious example is even with Uber, going from A to B. Human beings need to go from A to B.
Yes.
And why they could raise the price is because it's inherently valuable that you can get from A to B faster and safer and more reliably and quicker. Also in terms of I can just, punch a few buttons and then in 2 minutes, a driver shows up at my doorstep, and takes me to the airport an hour from here for, less than $50. That's incredibly valuable, and it's an obvious thing. So now you can just make that even more valuable and even more efficient, even more effective, even more safe, even more user friendly, and all that. So that's an obvious case. With electricity, same thing, right? Well, we are using candles, and now we can just use lamps, and we can kind of scale that. So obvious use cases. With AI, that is still missing. And that's a very interesting thing, because if we look back at previous examples and the booms and the busts and then the building and consolidation periods, and even if you think about how, let's say, the factory floor itself during the Industrial Revolution, I mean, there were some applications of that technology that did not serve the best interest of human beings. If you think about child labor and the horrible conditions, you see, so
lots of workplace injuries and very
exactly.
unsafe environment.
So if you think about a hammer, like a hammer is a tool, and a hammer can help you build a house or bash someone's head in, but it's a tool. It's still a tool, and then the application matters. Again, that's an Aristotelian approach to the thing. So I think with AI, like, you're making the case that we actually don't even know. I mean, we're trying to figure out like what we're going to do with this thing, but we don't have the obvious use case. We don't have an obvious house that we want to build with it, right? We don't have from A to B to go, and it seems like that there's this collective fever dream of capital trying to find those use cases. And your argument is that, well, if it hasn't been obvious so far, something is wrong. And I can tell you about, where I personally see that going with the enterprise applications and all that, which I think there's an argument to be made there. But I also like and why I wanted to talk to you, because even if regardless, by the way, I think you still have an argument beyond that in the macroeconomic sense, right?
Enterprise application is of no interest to me. Like, okay, so it helps you in your enterprise. Well, this was the whole point of that Atlassian study is after several years, I'm still not seeing an improvement in my productivity, my quality, or my communication. I'm like, well, in the enterprise level, that's kind of what you're doing it for. So if you're a couple of years in and you've already blown some money doing this and you're not really seeing a return, my question is, how long are you going to continue? Why would you continue funding it? Because it's going to cost you money. Oh, by the way, not the money they're charging you now. The money they're going to charge you when they have to start paying for the stuff, because they're losing billions and billions of dollars. So that's where you start to go, have you hooked people enough? Because you, like the drug dealer, they gave this stuff away at such a low price to try to get you hooked. But as people are getting hooked, they're starting to realize the drug's not giving them the high that they wanted. And when they took off the intimacy aspect of ChatGPT, it made a lot of people really angry. It's like, that was the drug. Like, people were getting addicted to the very most awful application of this particular technology you could possibly have ever dreamed of. Like, that's when you look at those things and you look at what they're flailing around saying, well, we're trying this and we're doing this. If this video generation tool that they did was meant to be a gateway drug to get people into generating their own things, that gets old really quickly. I mean, you can only have, Hitler dancing on a table so many times before you're like, all right, whatever. Like, at some point you go, it's a novelty, it's a toy. And what they're trying to do is say, no, I need you addicted to the toy so I can charge you a lot more money for it. And I just look at that and I'm like, but these are so boring. Like, they're just not that interesting. And when you're talking about applications within a corporate environment, are there applications of AR that are great? Unbelievable ones. I've heard the utility industry is using it now so that they can start to they have sensors out so that when a cable starts doing the slightest different thing, they go, this cable's about to fail. So before we have a power outage in this market, let's send a tech out there to replace this cable now. And I go, that is awesome. That is a wonderful usage. I don't know how much more you're adding to my utility bill to do that. Hopefully something very, very small. Because if you asked me and you said, do you really want this? Or would you rather keep paying less for utilities? I'd probably pay less for my utilities. This is the kind of stuff. There's a trade-off there. So when you see these products, these companies who invested a lot in AI, and they're forcing the AI into the tools, and I don't have to say them by name because we already know who they are. They're forcing them in. Now, if you charge me a cent more for those things, I'm going to be furious because I don't use them. I know other people do, but I don't use them. And I certainly don't want to be charged to have features that I'm being used. In fact, I've tried to uninstall them and you can't really do that. So what happens is you force these things in and then you go, here's how many people are using this. And it's like, well, they kind of have no choice. You kind of force them to use it. Like, how much utility are they getting it? And with utility isn't about, well, I get something free, so I use it. That's not true utility. True utility is, for a cost, I'm justifying my cost. So if I'm saying I'm using this thing for free, then I've not justified anything because I put nothing into it. So any return out of it is acceptable. Any return. Because it's not, I didn't invest anything. The second I started investing, I have to say, did I get this money worth? And this is where I'm looking at it going, boy, there should be some good ideas right now where you start to go, boy, they're going to start charging for this. And that's going to really make them a ton of money because you're going to have this. I don't see a have to have in anything. I see they're convenient. People use GPT to summarize emails or do certain things. And I go, cute, great, whatever. Now, how much are you willing to pay so that you lose your reading skills? How much are you willing to pay so that you don't have to come up with an original email anymore? Like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, how big is that market and how much can you continue to increase price? And I'm not so sure that they've created enough of an addictive base right now to do those things going forward. But this is still all being done. And the reason why I put the post up, this is still all being done as we're starting to look at the next 10 years, especially in America, and go, you're about to see the lowest labor force growth in the US that we have ever seen since World War II. I'm not talking since before World War II. I'm sorry, since the Great Depression. So you're talking about net labor force growth of 5.3 million to 2034. Of that 5.3 million, we believe that almost all of that, probably 100 and some percent of that, will be immigrants. Most of them, about 80% to 85%, will not just be immigrants, but they'll be poor immigrants coming in to do service jobs. So all of the net growth in your workers, people earning money, paying money, are going to be people who are going into lower paying jobs who probably won't be buying your products. The rest of the population is aging and inverting, and you start to go, you're generating foretold, unbelievable, unprecedented amounts of money to go into an industry that is staring at a global economy that is reversing. And you go, that seems reckless. Like you not only need to create a product, but it needs to be a product that's so great that it literally gets rid of a ton of other industries and it becomes the product. And you look at that and you go, it would have to be physical. It would have to do the things all of the other products do. And you have to do that in 2 to 4 years. You got 2 to 4 years. That's it. By the way, when we say it's coming, understand the bills come due. The bills are coming due in the next 2 to 4 years. So I got to generate several $1 in the next 2 to 4 years to pay for these bills. So they better have a product, and it better come out next year, and it better knock your socks off.
And I want to talk about both the corporate economics, some of the examples with Amazon just having laid off 30,000 people and why they did that. Right? Because sometimes people say, oh, they already laid off 30,000 people because AI. Well, there's a sleight of hand there because it's not like AI made things so efficient that now they can do without 30,000 people. It was more about the investments that they made in AI. Right. The easiest way to fix their bottom line was to get rid of people. Right? We can talk about that.
They're all doing it. Meta admitted it.
Exactly.
They've all admitted it. That's what
it's not a, I want to say open secret, but it's not even that. It's just, it becomes obvious. And that's actually one factor. I know that we talk about a lot of things, but one factor I think that's also different from previous revolutions is that, how the market behaves, and the market is essentially a narrative-driven landscape, right? That's how investments move based on storylines. And we never had, even in the dot-com era, a network society through which information could travel in the digital space immediately. In the dot-com era, I would not be having this conversation with you because I wouldn't have an idea what you think or what you say. I wouldn't bump into your thoughts. Right? Because even with 200,000 impressions, that's not a global reach. I still found you. I still heard your voice, right? And we can kind of amplify these things. So that's a new landscape. No one knows what to do with it, not from the top, not from the bottom. So that's also like a different thing that before you could have had these secrets. You can't really have all the secrets anymore with these things. Right? Now, I also want to talk about this macroeconomic view of, okay, we're staring down a global economy that's about to invert for all kinds of different reasons. So big picture, that's a very irresponsible move. So I definitely want to go there. I'm just articulating these things because I don't want to forget them, right? Before we go there, and I think it's still maybe just worth spending a few minutes on the whole, well, will it actually produce any value? Will there be any use cases, right? So I completely hear you, and I'm personally also with you, especially in the consumer application side, that it feels like they are trying to force it. I think that people are vomiting it back, though, figuratively, right? People actually don't want the digital drug, right? And and I mean, maybe they will use it, right? But it's just like any other drug epidemic, right? So I agree with you 100%. Will there be some sort of consumer application? Maybe. Maybe I'm also addicted to that digital drug on some level with my personal note-taking, but also I am aware that I might pay a price for it, right? So, and I think people are becoming aware of that. Your mental facilities, your abilities, your ability to write and speak. If you think that you can just outsource that to GPT, you're in for a rude awakening, right? So, and I think just looking at myself, when that whole thing came out, I was like, wow, now I can, all these thoughts and ideas that I have, I can build a blog in a weekend, right? But you realize within days that that's just not true. And then if you look at even very ardent proponents of AI, right, post things that are seemingly very skeptical and critical of AI, especially the AI slop that's flooding social media. But you see, I know, and everyone else knows, and even people who don't know, what they do? They kind of vote with their time that they just disengage. That's also happening.
It eats itself.
That's a very important thing. People, I don't know what's happening with AI. I don't even know. I don't know if an article is written by AI or not. No, but deep down you kind of do. And then
You do.
the quality of the conversation, the quality of the images, the quality. YouTube did not ban AI, or not ban, but demonetize AI videos because for reasons of philanthropy. I guarantee it was
Yeah.
because they could see immediately that the AI generated videos end up in declining engagement metrics. That is
And it makes
100% what happened.
and the more I see of them, the less I'm going to YouTube.
Exactly. So that kind of dopamine loop in your brain, there's something about human generated content and AI generated content, some sort of difference that we don't fully understand. Who knows what kind of reasons, philosophical, maybe theological reasons. We don't know, but it's a fact.
It's empathy. It's person talking, and they're just it's in their imperfection.
Yeah.
Like, you can sense perfection, and no one likes it. No one liked the smart aleck kid. We've always said that AI. I was just at a conference surrounded by a bunch of business people. We were eating lunch, and I said something that AI, when I'm around AI, what it reminds me of is an overconfident 7th grader. And a guy beside me goes, I find it more like an obnoxious 3rd grader. It's telling you things and saying this is true, but a 3rd grader doesn't even know if it's true or not. A 7th grader probably thought it was true and told you that. And he goes, but it's doing it in a way that is just like, so yeah, this is the answer. And you go, no, it's not. And he goes, oh, you're right, it's not. Like, that's what AI does.
Exactly.
And you go, that is that's like a bratty teenager. Like, you're not convicted in what you're doing. You're telling me things that may or may not be true. And there's only so many applications we have in the world where something that may or may not be true is okay, because so much of what we needs to be true. And by the way, when I ask you to do something the same, then you have to do it the same way every time. And that's also not what you're getting. Well, how many things in the world can we do that can't be done the same way? Robotics in this country. So I do a lot on robotics when I speak. 90% of our robotic installations last year in the US were standard robots. It's the same robots we've always been installing. Bang, stamp, bang, stamp. Same ones, 90%. About 11%, so 89%, so 11% were what we call collaborative robotics. So they're reacting a little bit to the environment around. They're able to, something got in the way, it moved the arm a little bit and stamped the product. But it did react to somewhat to what was going on. And you look at this and people keep saying, when a lot of times when you talk about AI, people start talking about it and you go, stop. That's a robot. Like, don't confuse these two. AI is a large language model. I said, you're talking about an application which would be inside of a robot. I'm like, okay. Now, if we're going to talk about robotics, then there's a couple things you got to do here. Number one, you're going to have to engineer these robots. You're going to have to test them for years, making sure they don't hurt anybody or kill anybody. For example, back in, I was working for a company, and a couple of decades ago, this was the beginning of when they were trying self-driving cars. And the statement was made that in about 10 to 15 years, all of the semis on the road would be self-driving. And this was made about 15 years ago. And
in 2014, I remember everyone was preparing for the imminent replacement. What are we going to do in 12 months with all the truck drivers? That was the thing.
Yeah,
this was in 2014.
Yeah. And here we are. It's 2025. Go on the highway right now. There's no self-driving highways. We don't see any here. And the reason being is that a truck makes one bad decision and kills 4 people. The company's sued through the floor, and it's over. If this is an AI surgeon and there's no surgeon sitting beside it, and then the surgeon does something really stupid, and I find out that you used the technology and the surgeon wasn't sitting there, I'm suing that technology through the floor. So I've got to have to test these things for many, many, many years, especially if they're interacting with human beings. Then the second part of that is, oh, by the way, you have to have robotics technicians who are installing and maintaining and repairing these things. We can't find any skilled tradespeople in the US as it is now, let alone highly skilled technicians that handle robotics. That is actually a pretty rare skill set. It's one that everybody would like to have, but it's very, very rare. Third thing, I put a robot into an environment, let's say like a fast food place, and that robot is doing something really, really important. Let's say it's doing something like literally flipping the patties. It's creating the food. It is my single source of revenue. And then something happens and it breaks. And I go make a call and I'm like, I need a robotic technician over here now. I've got customers standing in line. I can get there in about 2 weeks. No. I need you here now. We always say like McDonald's can't even keep a ice cream machine running. Like
Yeah, yeah.
how in the world can you keep a robot that's getting covered in grease and reacting to the environment? How are you keeping that running? It's like it becomes a single point of failure in a franchise situation where an owner invested a lot of money and now they're watching downtime occur. You would have to make sure over decades to make sure this stuff was so well tested and proofed and everything. And people keep trying to rush it that it's coming in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm like, the biggest experts in robotics are like, you're so far away from that kind of robotic and everything. You're starting to see these, like they're starting to advertise this home robot and everything. A very mild, amusing usage, but we're talking about a true value generating thing in the market. And this is, once again, excuse me, I just look at it and I think in our paper, Rising Storm, we talked about in the Japanese hospitals, they had to abandon their robotics program because the nurses were spending more time fixing the robots than they were taking care of the patients. So they had to abandon. It's like people who consider themselves on the cutting edge of technology, who have the biggest labor shortages, can't make this stuff work right now. Well, Ron, it's going to get better. Sure, it'll get better. It's going to take us a long time to get there. Their window is a couple years. They have to start making revenue. Now, this is the point of what I'm putting up is you're a couple years in, there's some big checks that are being written. Those aren't endless. This isn't steam engine. We've got 30, 40 years to pay this back. No. These checks are going to be due in the next couple of years. What justifies it? Because my utility costs are going up already. I better see the incredible promise, not telling me, please don't tell me it's going to take my job. That's really nasty. Oh, your utility costs are going up and I'm going to take your job. Okay, you know that's gross. Like, what's your actual benefit here? And I'm begging you and I'm begging anybody who's listening to you, tell me the benefits that it's worth paying for by all of us. That what are we getting out of this that everybody should be glad they're paying for it?
Yeah, and I think there's also, and the fact that the energy costs and the water, it definitely makes the conversation more difficult, to justify.
It doesn't come without pain.
Now, let me give you a few examples. But before, it's interesting how AI and this whole thing also reveals a lot about our unarticulated or previously not articulated preferences and our own humanity, just the whole idea of our visceral reaction to the AI slop, right? Because even people who would say that, no, I love AI generated content, well, your dopaminergic system will still disengage and you can't control that, right? Yep. And then there was this a science fiction novel and then a movie with Will Smith, iRobot, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, now, it's interesting that in that scenario, actually, the robot was nothing what we have now, and that wasn't the kind of AI that we have now. That was a full-blown human-like AI with actual feelings and all that. So we don't even have that, nothing approximate. But it was a good novel, and like every good fiction was kind of poking at a truth hidden beneath multiple layers that even if it was so, like the central conflict was that Will Smith was in a car accident and then basically they were underwater and he was there with a young girl, right? And then the robot came in, made an assessment of the situation, and then Will Smith's survival rates were like 74%, the girls were only 20%, so that he saved Will Smith instead of the girl. And then Will Smith had this like huge resentment towards the robot because the human would have known to, even if it's a lower chance, he should have gotten the kid. Again, like a nice story, but it says something about that even if you see the self-driving car, we don't really like it. It's scary. It's scary to abandon yourself to something unknown that is fundamentally and ontologically unknown to you, not because you're not used to seeing it. You might get acclimatized to it, but there is a rejection and it stays to that kind of sci-fi utopistic thinking that we're already seeing. So there's already a change of tune. I mean, you can peddle these narratives, right? But the public will respond, and
they do.
And again, the public will respond not just by posting and vocalizing their distaste for it. They will vote with their time and attention and all that, and
their money.
They already changed the tune of the whole AI will replace you, and that's a good thing. Right. So now, even in corporations, That's actually one of the biggest issues with adoption, that people are fearful of the whole thing and they don't like it. So
because they forced it.
exactly. But now the narrative needs to be changed too. And this is what I would like to just kind of, present to you as one avenue forward, as all these narratives come down crumbling. And you could even say that, well, that's still just natural with the boom and bust. This is the bust. This is the bust, when all these dead ends are getting exposed and the dead wood is burning down so that the real core value can remain, on which we can actually build some meaningful solutions. We don't know. It might not happen, might happen. No one knows the future. And I don't have a crystal ball. But now the argument is that, okay, look, we now know that we can't just let people go by tens of thousands, right? Nor do we want to. Nor do we want to either.
Destroy your consumers. That's a smart idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Now what we can do now, and not just your consumers, but also your employees.
Yeah. No, I'm saying by letting your people go, you're ultimately removing consumers from the society. Yeah.
Exactly. So now we can kind of shift our attention to identifying actual issues and blockers in existing workflows in companies. So let's say there's a data scientist who gets paid $200,000 a year, right? And that data scientist has to, every single day, in order to do his job, do a bunch of things that he's supposed to be doing, and he's forced to do a bunch of things that he should not be spending his time with, right? That gets him out of flow, that is some menial job, and there's no good way around that. We have to put up with this, and if it scales across a company, that's a lot of money going to waste. Now, you can say that, well, I want to fix this issue so I can fire the data scientists. That's one argument. Or you can say that, no, I want to fix the issue so that my data scientist can actually now work on better things, more inspiring things, innovative things that could actually probe what's possible and create better solutions, better products, better supply chains, like fix actual real problems. So now that's an argument. And the argument for that, look, in order to actually get there, for workflows to be fixed at scale, we didn't just need LLMs, but we need specifically agentic applications. Again, we can say that, well, there are a laundry list of issues with agentic applications. They might not happen, but at least the argument is that the maturation of agentic applications, actually, that has been pretty steady, right? I know that we're sick of the it's on the doorstep thing, but it's like, hey, it's already being deployed. One of the issues, and I'm just getting a little bit into the nitty-gritty of the technology side, just to kind of present a perspective, is that one of the reasons why adoption has not been happening is not just visceral rejection or lack of familiarity or all that, but also the lack of accuracy. Lack of accuracy was a huge issue, right? Yeah. I know. I mean, we just had a masterclass with Fortune 1000 data analytics leaders who are, by the way, caught up in this whole AI narrative, right? These are not the people who stand on stage, talking about all kinds of gross things that they try to shove down the public's throat, right? No, these are serious professionals who are trying to do the best job that they have. They're trying to ground the corporate narratives and the board's view of this whole thing in reason, right? And they want to build good solutions that save people time so that they can actually have more enjoyable.
I love that.
So with that, one of the big issues is the accuracy. It's been so far like 74% inaccurate in any kind of meaningful application. Now, the way to overcome this, and again, I'm not going to drop into too much technical detail here, but it has to do with stuff like semantic layers and all that. Most people don't even know what a semantic layer is, nor should they, right? But it has to be like, okay, you need an integrated a knowledge base across company. You need to have, the knowledge layer, the insights layer, the semantic layer, and all these things require thought. It requires experimentation. It requires resources, which they've been having so far. It requires moral support and vocal support from the board, which now they kind of had. And these things need to be fixed. I'm seeing with my own two eyes that those things are actually getting fixed. So we went from 74. Now, if you do your job right, you could do 50, went down to, into the 14 range, where there is soon like a meaningful shift where we can go to, okay, there's enough context-rich data and the data
Right.
foundations will be there for some meaningful agentic applications to do effective work at removing blockers from existing workflows. Those are existing problems. That's like,
Yep.
John waking up in the morning, brewing his coffee, and he spends less time with his kid or spends less time on a strategic initiative that could actually lead to some, meaningful development and innovation.
Yeah.
Instead, he's trying to, fix data sets that he shouldn't be spending his time on. Now, an agent can come in and it will actually free up that resource. So one argument being made is that what we don't know yet is that if we free up all that intellectual horsepower and we don't respond by, okay, now I just don't need these people so they can go to a soup kitchen. But like, no,
Right.
John is a valued employee and we want him here. And in fact, I want for my $200,000, $300,000 that I'm paying for him a year, I want him to generate way more value for his stakeholders and thus our customers as well. So that's an argument that's being made, right? That's an argument that's being made. And I see tangible evidence for that to, come relatively soon. Does this mean that I will have a robot lackey here with human-like intelligence, serving me my dinner and booking my travel to Europe anytime soon? No, nor do I want that, right? It's much more nuanced and much more sophisticated. It happens in the corporate layer. And now I'm presenting this to you because from what I understand is that even if this is true, even if what I'm saying is true, even in the best case scenario of that happening, what I'm reading from your perspective that, okay, fine, it might or might not happen, right? But there's a bigger issue still. There's a bigger issue still. And then on that side of the supportive argument for AI, and I know a lot of people who are actually genuinely like, good faith individuals, none of the none of this how do you call that, not superhuman, but I'm blanking on the word, the kind of dystopian thinking about, rising above these, meat suits kind of thinking, which I think is just, transhumanism.
Okay.
That's the word, because for some reason we are supposed to rise above our own humanity as a collective project, right? So I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about good moral, good faith individuals who just understand the technology and are looking to build a house with the hammer and not bash people's head in, right? So that being said, I just wanted to kind of vocalize it. I wanted to kind of present to you that, okay, this can or cannot be true. But what we're still interested in is how the economics might shake out in the coming years, because that's something immediate, right? That's something, even if someone listening to this conversation might be an AI proponent, might be an AI skeptic, they might have had some good insights here. And, a lot of people might say, oh, no, you should say this, you should say that. Okay, we tried to cover it as much as we could, but let's shift our attention to what might actually happen next year, 2026, and beyond. So maybe let's focus on that now.
So a couple things here, and I want to respond to what you said, because it's actually going to be a big part of where you're going. So in everything you're saying, when we talk about using a technology, what you're doing with any technology, and it should be with this one, is what you're doing is saying, I've got a new technology. And because I have a bunch of rock stars in my company, those rock stars are going to take that technology and become bigger rock stars. Like I bought this to make these people even better. It's like, I was a pretty smart person, but man, when you gave me a computer and I had Excel and now I had a spreadsheet and I didn't have to write some things down on paper, like, oh my goodness, like now all of the ideas and things that I had, I could do them so much faster. It's like, I knew what I wanted to accomplish. I just didn't have the method to do that. Bring up the internet. Back in the, I don't know how we lived before the internet, because let's say you were researching, you're writing a paper. In the old days, you had to go find the sources of things. You have to go read them. And then you have to like make sure you photocopied them and everything. And then you store those things. So when you wrote, you had your sources and everything. And the internet allowed you to be like, okay, I know what I want. I got to go get my sources. I do my Google searches and I go and I find my sources and I put it all together. And so you do these kind of things. And what I'm doing is it's my intellectual capital that is valuable to my organization. The only hindrance to using my intellectual capital is that I still have to do some grinding, as we always called it in data analysis, your data grinding, in order to get to that 1 5-second mind-blowing slide. I spent 2 weeks working on the research to come up with my 5-second mind-blowing slide. Now, in the discovery of coming up with that 5-second slide, I learned so many things. I researched wrong paths. I realized that this data set does exist and I might use that for a future cause, but I don't really need it for what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of going to store that to the side. I found out that I actually was thinking about it upside down. And then when I swiped this thing out and got this one, that one now works. But I know why that one doesn't work now because I already did that. There's learning that's occurring during the time you're doing something. If you shortcut any of that, you didn't learn anything. You got a conclusion. You don't know how the conclusion was there. And the conclusion is a quarter to a tenth of the fun. The fun is, how did I arrive there? So grinding, which stinks, is a critical aspect of my intellectual capital exploding. Because the next time somebody comes to me and they go, you know what, you saw this relationship, but I bet there's a relationship over there. And you go, no, there's not. There's not. I looked at it. And I said, and when I looked at it, I realized that the reason why there wasn't a relationship is because of this, this, and this. So anything that shortcuts exploration is, in my opinion, hurts you. So the MIT study that came out this summer, they said the MIT students that used AI were much basically dumber than the ones that didn't. They didn't know why they had written what they had written. They couldn't defend it. And they found out their cognitive abilities had really declined in the process of using it. That's the kind of stuff I looked at and I go, okay, if you're going to use tools and you want to use it to save time, make sure it's the things that I already know, the things I already do, but I don't want to take the time to do it today, but I already have that and I already know it. If it's doing the discovering for you, I think it's a very bad thing because you're now missing out on the discovery. In another way that this plays out is we've been hearing a lot of things. I don't really believe this. I have colleagues who are on my side as well. We've seen a big drop in entry-level hiring. Now, I will tell you that in any recession, you always see a big drop in entry-level hiring. If it wasn't for the AI expenditures that we had this past year, we'd probably be in a recession right now. So this is very similar to that. However, if anybody's thinking, well, I want AI to eventually, a couple of years from now, do entry-level work, then they're missing out on all of the intellectual capital starting points that entry-level workers give you. Entry-level workers come in, they start to learn. Yes, they're not great on day one, but they start working with your best people. They start learning tricks of the trade and everything. After 3 to 5 years, they're now pretty sharp. And now when they see slop coming out of a tool, they go, no, that's not true. Actually, don't ask it that question. You can't ask it that question. You got to do it like this. You got to understand what this is doing here. This is what we do over here. This doesn't excuse corporations from being corporations, of raising a workforce, of upskilling and retraining and doing all the things they need to do. It could dumb them down very dramatically, because if I take all of that learning away and the tools are doing these things, now my intellectual capital in my industry is disintegrating, which means my ability in the future to come up with new and amazing products is going to go down dramatically, of coming up with new efficiencies, because I don't have people who are there going, hey, look, you know what, we could have a tool do this in the future, what we're doing over here. AI is not going to tell you that. It's not going to tell you, hey, this thing you're doing, AI should have been doing it. It is really, it's like I said, it's a dumb seventh grade. It's just doing what it's told, telling you answers that it thinks you wants to hear. And there's cases where that's going to be great. But there's a lot of cases where there's a long-term thing. Because people keep saying, well, this is going to have a long runway. AI is going to really take off. And I'm like, well, I fear for where it's going, because what we're getting right now is a lot of dumbing down. People really not thinking when they're using it. Are you telling me in the future AI is going to be smart enough to know that it shouldn't be telling you the answer, that it should be making you? Is that how smart it is? It's so smart that it knows not to give you the answer, but to make you go look for it yourself? Because if it's not, then it's not very smart. A teacher in school doesn't give you the answers on the test. It gives you the test and tests your ability to get the answers. AI is cheating the learning process. Is that going to get better? These are the things that I'm thinking you have to start thinking about. So as we talk about applications, we do all of these things. You have to be doing these in the concern of the way these things were originally shaped. When OpenAI first formed, it was formed in a way of, we want to make society better, where people are enjoying their lives more and everything. Well, that some people look at that and go, well, that means we're working less. And it's like that. There's a lot of people like myself who love what I do. I'm not looking to get rid of my work. I like what I do. Now, if you can get rid of the really crappy parts of this job so that somebody would want to do that job, great. So if you can teach AI how to go through and clean all the toilets in the airport, then that's fantastic. All the person has to do is just make sure that it's taking it to the right place and have AI cleaning all the toilets in the airport. That would make that job, which we struggle to fill, more desirable, because now I'm no longer a person who cleans toilets. I'm a person that oversees the robotics of things, of which we clean the facilities in our airports. You see what I'm saying here? You see where I'm going? If it can take the things that are horrible and automate these things in a way that a person doing that has up leveled their job, which is what you're saying. You're saying it in a professional way, and I'm saying I already have enough professional workers. We're already doing just fine as an economy. If all technological innovation stopped today, we'd be just fine. We're not going to die. Everybody'd be fine. What I'm saying is, how do we account for the labor shortages that we could end up having? Well, we do it by making the work they're doing less awful. You're not getting rid of white collar jobs, but making the blue collar jobs cooler. Because now, like I said, I am a person who works with robots to make sure these tasks get done. You see where it's like, that's where I want to see these kind of things going.
And I hear you. And again, even big proponents of AI that I know personally, who are good faith actors, recognize these things, and we're finding out as we go along. The whole idea, I had no idea that ChatGPT will make me dumber, but is an obvious thing. If you think that now you're going to outsource your writing, it's almost like, even without a study, people know that if you try to outsource your writing to ChatGPT, you will lose your ability to write. Interestingly enough, I write more since ChatGPT arrived, and because I recognize what a valuable skill that is, and that's actually future proof, right? Like any kind of human skill. And I think we will see these corrections with a lot of damage, obviously. But so that's not great, obviously. Now, with the economics, can we just look at the whole phenomenon of maybe a single case of Amazon laying up to 30,000 people? I think that's an important case study to look at of what happened there, why it happened, and what it might mean moving forward.
Yeah. The beginning of the year, Amazon, like a lot of the companies, said they were going to invest $100 billion in AI. Now, for them, some of this is data centers, some of the chips, because they felt that their AWS needs were really, really much greater than they could service. So they wanted to make more investments in that. And this is similar stuff that we've heard from the Metas, from Alphabets. These are the people who say, we're going to put another, I think Zuckerberg just said, we're going to throw another 60 billion into this and everything. And so what happens is you have companies who are like, look, we've been spending a lot of money here. Our investors are not going to just sit here and let us just take that hit when they know we could be more profitable. So what they do is they account for that by, getting rid of layers. Now, I saw that Amazon's CEO came out and said, look, we overhired during the pandemic. And by the way, everyone knows that they did. That was, I heard stories of people who were walking into the warehouses after they had been hired to only sit there and look at all these other people standing there, just standing. And people were literally quitting the job because they're like, look, I feel guilty making money when I'm just standing here with all these other people. So
why did they do that?
To a degree that occurred. What's that?
Why did they do that? Why did they overhire?
I think it's just, who knows if they just had maybe a predictive system. Who knows if it was goodwill to society of, hey, during this pandemic, since we're making so much money, we're going to say we've generated all these jobs. I do believe the second is actually probably a little bit more accurate than anything else. I think there was we were making so much because of this stay at home thing that's going on right now. We want to goodwill this a little bit, but they did absolutely overhire. There's no doubt about it. You don't become the biggest company in the world, private employer in the world by, just organic growth, pure and simple. Sometimes you got to juice this a little bit. So you have a situation like that where I think we're still kind of shedding our way out of those overhires, but there are all of these kind of abusive investments. One of the things that I started tracking was every single company who said, we are laying off people and mentioned AI. So some outright said, we're replacing our customer service people with AI. Or some just said, hey, we're having layoffs and AI and all of these kind of things. And every single time I went in and I studied their CapEx expenditures for the past 3 years. And in every company who said it, their CapEx went completely into the stratosphere. That would be absolutely deplorable to spend that much CapEx on something without, obviously, you're not getting any return on that, at least for now. So they start cutting headcount later. We saw it absolutely in the banks, and we see it in kind of these ancillary things, but mostly we saw it in the big tech firms. That was a post I put up last Friday, is, how many announcements we're getting from these big tech firms, because they're the ones who are propping up this massive bet, this massive gamble, and they've dumped a lot of money into it, and they want to kind of account for that. So they're the ones doing the layoffs. And I think that this is a lesson that's being learned. Now, I think what's going to be interesting about this is as we're going forward, these companies are putting this enormous amount of money in as a bet that they're going to somehow get a return on this. So they're betting that the companies that are their clients will go down their route eventually, that their clients will then incinerate their CapEx going into AI and get rid of their workers as a result. Like they're trying to model this kind of thing. So I think sometimes when you hear people say, we did this because of AI, it's because they're trying to set a precedent so that their clients someday will say, oh, then we can cut all of our workers and just up our CapEx, which would benefit these original ones really greatly. However, the veil is really falling as this year is going on. You can just see it. Like there are more and more people like myself. I would never take credit for all of this, but there are more and more people like myself who are like, you notice the companies that are incinerating a lot of money on AI are the ones who keep announcing all these layoffs. It's like these risks that they're taking are not paying off the degree, or certainly it's going to be a long runway to it. And so they have to get rid of headcount to help offset that. And you look at this and you think, we're learning a lot in 2025. So, I made a prediction at the end of 24 that this was 25 was AI's put up or shut up year. You can find it on my website, not my web, but my company, Lightcast.io's website. And I said, this is the year, like this is the biggest thing we're going to see in labor is they've got to start showing that they're going to generate something, that they're going to generate a product. And now we are in November. There's no products. They've now incinerated hundreds of billions more than they started the year doing. And we're still not going to have anything to show for it at the end of this year. So now you move your prediction to 26 and you go, all right, in 26, you all who are just continue, you've pledged 500 billion over the next 2 years that it's going to go into the building data centers that you really can't illustrate the people even want. Like what's going to happen with that? And are you all just going to just incinerate yourselves? What if you can't drag with the Pied Piper? What if all of the piping doesn't attract any rats? Like what if the rest of the companies start going, I don't know. That was the point of the post on Friday. We're a couple years into companies saying that they've made a push. They want to do this. We're going to do this. And you're 2 years in and companies are going, we're really not seeing any great value here. So 26 starts to become a year of where you start seeing companies maybe investing less. Maybe if they start looking at it, they go, well, look, we recognize that it can be valuable in this part of our corporation. By the way, there's already proof of that. Companies that were doing 5 to 6 projects are now doing like 1 to 2. And they decided to peel off of the other ones because they're like, those are dead ends. And so they're starting to focus in. Well, the more I focus in, the less I need, the less resources I need, the less IT or AI compute I need, because you're starting to hone in on the way that you want to use this thing. And I think that that's what's going to start taking shape more next year. Well, we already know that the percent growth in uploads of ChatGPT have really leveled off, and now it's kind of flatlined. We know that the average amount of time that people are spending on ChatGPT has been going down. And you go, whoa, you guys are trying to accelerate into a payout here because you need to, like I said, you need to make a couple $1 trillion here. But it's taking so long for you to do anything, and you're incinerating so much that I think the world's going to start getting disinterested. So they keep trying to keep the train. What is it called? The hype train.
Yeah.
But it's like at some point, smart people like you and me sit there and go, okay, yeah, I know you said that. You said that was coming and everything, but I don't see anything.
I don't even think you need to be smart to be honest with you. Yeah, I think just the average person. The average person is just growing disinterested in the narrative. They just start to do and look at something else. That's what happens.
This is why I said you have to show something. Like you're too far into this, and people are like, "Well, no, yes, you are." LLM's been around for 7 years, in earnest since 22. You're 3 years in. Like people should start be seeing the really cool things. Like I said with .com, you could see websites. We were buying things off of them. You go, "This is really cool," and everything. What we're left with now is just a really fancy Google that kind of talks back to you, and you got some other things, but you're like, this gets old. Like people want new toys, and this toy.
Let me actually just real quick, like insert something there because that's a very interesting observation. That with the .com bubble, we had the websites with immediate utility, and websites are still the thing. Now I think we already saw some of these cool things from AI. Let's say, isn't it cool that I can say, hey, write an article, hey, hey, here's a transcript from this video from this guy and this video from this guy, and now write an article that I can publish analyzing this from different angles. I think it's pretty darn cool.
That's pretty
The
cool.
problem is that people don't like the output. Because if you do that and try running a blog with that, right, there's like growing disinterest in that. Again, I think it's a lot of it is subconscious, right? Or isn't it cool that I can just, punch in a few words into a video generator and it will create me assets that might have taken me, days.
I never could generate a video before, and now I can generate a video and it looks like AI slop.
And exactly. So I think one of the issues is that it is really cool, and I think they already came up with the cool thing, and it is cool. But then there, for some reason, the body is rejecting the organ. It's just not really gaining that traction. Now, this might be a good thing, might be a bad thing, in the sense that a lot of AI practitioners and proponents are saying that finally we can move past this stuff. And we can actually focus on the real applications, the real good stuff, right? Yeah. Again, whether they are right or wrong.
Which is what? Yeah, I know. We're waiting to hear
yeah, exactly. But I think that that's like this phenomenon that I think we already had the cool stuff, and now they are trying to. Well, here's erotica to you, which everyone just says no. Or like at least.
And this is, so you said something. I want to capture this real quick. I'm going to go. Sure. I'll let you go right back. I just want to say this.
Sure.
So I did something cool. I had it I did these two things and I got them together and I said, write an article for me. And now your article goes out there. Well, now guess what? Your article now becomes part of the AI chain. And so the next time somebody generates something, they're using your article. So that's the law, the curse of recursion. So each time AI is reading its own stuff, it's getting dumber and dumber and dumber, because it's like, let's say you combine these things with things sort of were really right, or this is just some things here, and now it's re-ingesting its own food over and over and over again. And that's exactly what's happening to AI. So now it's synthetic data sets. We have to come up with data sets. Well, that's funny when you say that. That means a human being has to come up with synthetic data sets to feed to AI. It's like we're right back to humans again, trying to create stuff to feed this thing because this thing's not smart enough to do these things. It's like, I know that I'm probably getting some of this stuff wrong, that I know that a really gifted AI person would be like, this guy's a fool, blah, 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 blah. But even the most ardent AI supporter at this point would have to realize, like, what is it? Do your thing or get off the pot. Like, you've got to show me something, because you're consuming all of our capital in this country. You're consuming an enormous amount of power. Please tell me that this is for something that's really, and I mean really genuinely, going to benefit all of us. That we're all going to sit there and go, oh my goodness, I am so glad you did that. Because the reasons that I'm seeing right now, when I think about these short, fake videos, AI generated videos, if I think about my power bill going up higher to pay for that, oh my gosh, that makes
blood boil.
Yeah, that is not good for humanity. It's just vile that I'm paying for that. So I just want to make that point.
No, that's great. And we already have 9 minutes left, and I wish I didn't have a hard stop, bud, because we could probably go on. But I just want to insert something there. You know the movie The Matrix, 1999. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, I love Matrix.
So yeah, absolutely. I saw it like 40 times. It's an absolute classic. Now you know that there was one kind of issue there in the story that even as a kid I was like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm just running with the story. And it was that the machines were keeping the humans as a battery for energy.
Right.
That was the thing. I'm like, okay, that's not feasible, but fine. Like the whole thing is just, way deeper in it. But it's interesting, and people can fact check me on this, because I'm not going to give like 100% accurate representation of the original story. But apparently in the original script, they had something much closer to the machines keeping the humans more for the novelty of the knowledge that they can generate, because if machines live on their own synthetic data, they basically collapse and die, right? Mm-hmm. Which is LLM model collapse. It's called model collapse. If you feed AI its own synthetic data, exactly. So it kind of needs the human novelty, and that's actually one of the reasons why the obvious gains in model performance could not be achieved anymore, because actually, ironically, we do not have enough data to feed the AI to get those big improvements, right? So the reason why they abandoned that storyline is it was just too out there, too complicated. So they needed to go with the something that people were kind of familiar with, right? So, and I think we're kind of seeing that. And economics 101, I'm speaking to an economist. What happens when something has unlimited supply? What happens to its value?
Unlimited value, potentially.
Yeah, well, but also if supply demand, it's like if there's unlimited supply, the demand like
right.
Yeah, you
see
what I mean?
There's unlimited supply, no one cares anymore. Yeah,
no one cares, and that's what we're seeing. There's unlimited supply of the AI slop, and no one cares anymore. No one, its price will basically go down
early. Like
like
they released that horrible tool like a little while ago, and it's like all these people got on there and generated all this stuff, and it's like after a while you go, okay, it's boring. Why do people like Instagram? Because they're watching these people that are real people relating to them going, oh man, this just happened to me. And they're like, yeah, that just happened to me too. There's this it's empathy. Empathy is the secret. Technology can pretend to empathize. Empathy is a real thing. And it's like, you've seen these things where people have committed suicide because of, dealing with these fake tools and everything. The reason why there's such a disconnect is not only is this thing reinforcing horrible things that you're doing, but it's the lack of empathy that would even know that I don't go down that route. And you can try to model empathy, you can try to do it, but anybody can tell. You can tell when I'm talking to if I'm talking to you and you're talking to me and I'm going, you're not listening. Like you're not empathetic. Like pretty soon as a friend, I'd tune you out. Like you just go away. We only want people around as friends to be the ones who you relate to the most, who really are connecting with what they're going, admit their faults, admit their successes and everything. No one's looking for a perfect person to be around. It's awful. The worst. No one wants to be around somebody who's like, I'm always right, you're always wrong, and I got this and I knew this. Like through this all, if where we're going with this isn't encouraging more human interaction, then I see this as the worst possible thing we're going. Our birth rates have plunged dramatically. If people get used to synthetic partners and things like that, your birth rates are going to go down much, much worse. It basically brings an end to civilization.
Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I don't think it will. I mean, even if you look at, again, we talk about the birth rate, unfortunately, it's like outside of the scope of this conversation, we won't have time, but you see the new generation coming around with these things. They are rejecting it because they are learning from it. Yeah,
I have kids too, other kids. They're in their 20s. And, I asked my son, who's 22, this a couple months ago, I said, what do you think about AI? And he goes, I don't. And I don't. Do you and your friends ever talk about it? And he goes, no. This is he's a summa cum laude graduate from college, and his friends all did really well in college. They all have jobs. And he goes, no, we don't talk about it. Who cares? Like, I don't care.
And I think the real opportunity in AI,
are talking about it like crazy.
Yeah. And I think the real opportunity in AI, if there is one, will again happen kind of behind the scenes, deep in workflows, if that happens. But
that would be wonderful. I'll take it. Yeah,
exactly.
Can you pay $2 trillion for that?
Yeah, exactly. So that is another question. Now, ironically, this whole thing, again, that's just, the eternal optimist in me, that there is an accentuation and the spotlight is again on the humanity of humanity, right? Think about Zoom calls. When the pandemic happened and Zoom calls took over and people finally got used to it, it was like, okay, it's the end of in-person events because now we can just have all events online. And what happened? Do you want another Zoom call in your calendar? Is that what you really want? No. Now in-person events are better than ever before. Same happened actually with sales professionals when they said that, chatbots are here. This was like before LLMs, by the way.
Yeah.
People thought that the pre-LLM chatbots will take over sales professionals because now people can just talk to the chatbot, get the information that they need, and what happened is that sales professionals became even more important in this economy. Yeah. Some people who can actually listen and build relationships. Now, 3 minutes, I want to ask you one thing, is that you posted about how we might actually be going for, maybe on the short term, kind of a soft landing. I might be putting words in your mouth, because if a burst happens, this AI actually did not create a bunch of jobs that are now going away. Can you just speak to that? I know maybe 3 minutes is unfair to you.
No, it's perfectly reasonable. During the dot-com boom, the U.S. economy created about 14 million jobs. During the housing bubble, we created about 7 million jobs. These are jobs that were fed into those things, into these companies, fed into the support industries, all of those things that go around it. In what we're calling the AI bubble, which is basically the past 3 years, since 2023, The technology companies that have done the most work on AI have lost jobs. So they're down 56,000 since this whole thing started. The rest of the economy, which has generated some jobs, about 60-70% of those jobs were in healthcare and like eating and drinking places. So that has nothing to do with AI. Those are just an economy trying to take care of its population. So we really struggle to see that there were any jobs really net jobs added because of AI. It really hasn't done anything for us like the previous bubbles. So why recessions hurt is when a bubble pops, all of those people who got their jobs as a result of things being hyperinflated lose their jobs when they actually return to their actual value. If AI busts and returns to what it's actually valued, which who knows if it has value, then there's nobody to lay off. Like the current firms that were investing the most in it have already begun layoffs. They may lay off some more people as a result of it. But the big 7 tech firms combined are only 1% of our employment in the US. And they have other products. They have other things that they do. They would never go completely bankrupt. They would just write this stuff off and go back to what they were doing. So that's why we're like, no one should fear this bubble popping, despite the fact that it's at magnitudes more than we've ever seen. Those magnitudes have literally gone to a circular loop, mostly of technological goods, chips that are going to be outdated in a couple years. It's really not going to hurt like the other ones have hurt.
Fantastic. And look, a good conversation is when you want to keep having it, right? And this is definitely one of those. I really appreciated your insights. And if you're down, we can do maybe another round in a couple of months. I'm sure there will be a lot to talk about.
Maybe a good point next year. And I could have been completely wrong. And you get me on here, you go, Ron, you were wrong about everything. And I get to explain why I was wrong. I'm never afraid of those conversations.
No, sure.
You learn more being wrong than you learn being right.
Definitely. And I think also, I'm just genuinely trying to learn and figure out what's going on with everyone else. And I can drop my 2 cents based on my perspective, but that's all I can do. And I really found yours valuable. I appreciated your time. And until next time.
All right. Thank you.